The strangest promises are the ones we never meant to make. No one in the grand ballroom could understand why Marcus Bennett stood so calmly beneath the crystal chandeliers while cameras flashed around him like a summer lightning storm. His charcoal suit was tailored but simple, his shoulders broad, his expression steady, and his warm brown eyes never wandered toward the sea of curious faces whispering behind expensive champagne glasses. Across from him stood Claire Whitmore, the $30 billion CEO whose name had appeared on magazine covers more times than she could remember. Her platinum blonde hair rested neatly over one shoulder, her elegant ivory dress catching the glow of the lights without asking for attention. Reporters kept asking the same question. Investors exchanged suspicious glances. Social media had already decided that the quiet black single father must have found the luckiest shortcut in America. They saw a mechanic's calloused hands beside a billionaire's wedding ring and assumed they already knew the story. They were wrong. Marcus wasn't smiling because he had married the richest woman in the room. Claire wasn't nervous because she regretted standing beside him. They were both silent for the same reason. Neither of them could believe that less than 24 hours earlier they had been complete strangers. The officiant spoke gently, almost disappearing beneath the endless clicking of cameras. But Marcus barely heard a word. His mind drifted backward, replaying every impossible moment that had brought him here. It had started with rain. The kind of steady Georgia rain that turned highways into silver mirrors and encouraged everyone to hurry home. Marcus had just finished another 12-hour shift repairing commercial heating systems across Atlanta. His muscles ached, his jeans carried the faint scent of machine oil, and all he wanted was to pick up his 8-year-old daughter Lily from his neighbor's apartment before she fell asleep on someone else's couch again. Life had never been glamorous, but it was honest. Every dollar he earned paid for school lunches, soccer cleats, overdue utility bills, and bedtime pancakes on Saturday mornings. That was enough for him. Across the city, Claire Whitmore was leaving a celebration that felt strangely empty. Her company's newest acquisition had added another $1 billion to her empire, yet every congratulatory handshake felt rehearsed. Every compliment sounded borrowed. Every smile disappeared the second she looked away. Success had filled every floor of her glass tower except the quiet places inside her own heart. She dismissed her driver early, hoping a few minutes alone would clear the noise from her thoughts. Instead, the rain only made the silence heavier. Neither of them knew destiny was quietly rewriting two completely different lives at the same traffic light. Marcus noticed the luxury sedan first, sitting motionless on the shoulder with its hazard lights blinking through the curtain of rain. Most drivers passed without slowing. He almost did the same. Lily would be waiting. Dinner would already be late. But something about the lonely silhouette standing beside the vehicle reminded him of something his father used to say before he passed away. If kindness has to fit your schedule, son, it was never kindness to begin with. Marcus sighed softly, eased his pickup onto the shoulder, and reached for the old umbrella resting behind the passenger seat. He had no idea the woman standing beside that stranded car would become his wife before another sunrise. He only knew someone looked like they needed help, and that had always been enough. Marcus stepped out into the rain, opened the faded navy umbrella, and walked toward the stranded sedan with the same measured pace he used every morning when holding Lily's hand across busy intersections. He stayed several feet away before speaking. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The woman turned quickly, her posture tense, her blue eyes guarded. Rain clung to loose strands of platinum hair as she tightened her grip on her phone. "I already called roadside assistance," she answered politely, though her voice carried the practiced caution of someone accustomed to strangers wanting something. Marcus nodded once. "That is good. Looks like they might be delayed in this weather." He glanced toward the flat rear. "Tire but never moved closer. I fix equipment for a living. I could change it in about 10 minutes if you would like." Claire studied him carefully. Years of boardrooms had taught her to read confidence, arrogance, fear, and deception, yet the man standing before her offered none of those. He simply waited without pressure. His clothes were damp from work, his boots stained from long hours, and there was something unexpectedly reassuring about the quiet patience in his eyes. "You're not asking for money?" she finally asked. Marcus smiled gently. "No, ma'am." "Then why stop?" The answer came so naturally it surprised even him. "Because my daughter would ask why I drove away." Claire lowered her eyes for just a second. Something inside that simple sentence landed heavier than she expected. Before she could respond, another flash of lightning illuminated the highway. Marcus noticed a slight tremble in her hands. "Do you have a jacket in the car?" he asked. "No." Without hesitation, he removed his lightweight work jacket and placed it over the hood of the sedan rather than handing it directly to her. "You can use this until help arrives." She looked at him, confused. "You will get soaked." He shrugged. "Rain washes off." The roadside remained quiet except for passing tires slicing through wet pavement. Claire's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and silenced the call without answering. Marcus noticed only the frustration crossing her face, not the corporate logo or the dozens of missed messages. Whatever burden she carried belonged to her, and he had no intention of asking. His own phone suddenly vibrated. Lily's smiling face appeared on the screen. Pumpkin. "Daddy, are you almost here?" her sleepy voice asked. Mrs. Dawson made grilled cheese. Marcus laughed softly. "Save half for me. I had to stop and help someone with car trouble." "Is she okay?" Lily asked immediately. He looked toward Claire before answering. "She will be." Claire heard every word. The conversation lasted less than a minute, but by the time Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket, something had quietly shifted. This was not a man trying to impress anyone. He was exactly the same with his daughter as he was with a stranger standing in the rain. A pair of black sport utility vehicles rolled to a stop behind the sedan. Men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the roadside before rushing toward Claire. "Miss Whitmore, thank goodness," one of them said with visible relief. Marcus instinctively stepped backward, giving them space. It was only then that he noticed their earpieces, the expensive vehicles, and the way every person looked at Claire before speaking. The realization settled slowly. The woman beside the broken-down car was far from ordinary. Claire accepted the jacket from the hood, looked back at Marcus, and opened her mouth as if she wanted to explain something, but another suited executive hurried over carrying documents and speaking urgently about emergency meetings, shareholders, and reporters waiting downtown. Within seconds, she disappeared into a circle of professionals. Marcus simply nodded to himself, returned to his pickup, and drove away believing that was the last time their paths would ever cross. If you're enjoying this story so far, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to Black Dad Destiny. Every day, we bring you touching stories, emotional love stories, and unforgettable journeys inspired by the moments that change people's lives forever. Marcus did not think about the woman again until the following afternoon. His biggest concern was helping Lily finish her third-grade science project before bedtime. Their apartment smelled of tomato soup and toasted bread, while construction trucks rumbled outside the old brick building. Lily sat at the kitchen table coloring planets with blue and purple markers. "Daddy," she said, looking up with complete seriousness, "Mrs. Dawson says every good story starts because somebody decided to help somebody else." Marcus smiled while tightening the loose leg on one of the dining chairs. "Mrs. Dawson sounds like a smart lady." Lily nodded proudly. "Did the lady from yesterday get home safely?" Marcus paused for a brief moment. "I hope so." He meant it. Nothing more. Across Atlanta, Claire Whitmore had not stopped thinking about the man who had driven away without asking for her name. Her executive conference room overlooked the skyline, but she barely noticed the view. Charts covered the digital screens. Lawyers debated contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Investors demanded immediate decisions after rumors of a hostile acquisition began spreading through financial media. Claire answered every question with her usual precision, yet her thoughts kept drifting back to one quiet sentence spoken on a rainy highway. "Because my daughter would ask why I drove away." Those words refused to leave. They did not sound rehearsed. They carried no ambition. They simply existed. During a short break, her longtime assistant, Emily Brooks quietly placed a folder beside her coffee. Your security team completed the report from yesterday. Claire opened it without much interest until one page caught her attention. There was a grainy photograph taken from a highway traffic camera. Marcus was walking away from the sedan with the umbrella folded under one arm. Did he ask for compensation? Claire asked. Emily shook her head. No. Did he know who I was? According to security interviews, he left before anyone addressed you by name. Claire looked at the photograph again. Find him. Emily hesitated. For legal reasons? Claire stared through the office windows for several seconds before answering. No, for human reasons. Meanwhile, Marcus's ordinary routine continued exactly as before. He repaired an aging air conditioning unit at an elementary school, joked with an elderly maintenance supervisor about college football, and stopped at a neighborhood grocery store after work. While comparing cereal prices, he noticed an older woman struggling to reach a large box from the top shelf. Without saying much, he simply lifted it down and placed it gently into her shopping cart. Thank you, young man, she smiled. Marcus tipped his head politely. My pleasure. A teenager stocking shelves watched the exchange and whispered to his coworker, that guy is always helping somebody. Marcus never heard him. He had already walked away toward the dairy section where Lily insisted the chocolate milk tasted better than the regular kind. Late that evening, a black luxury sport utility vehicle slowly rolled into the apartment parking lot. Emily stepped out carrying only a slim leather folder. She looked around at the modest neighborhood, the bicycles leaning against rusted fences and children drawing with sidewalk chalk before sunset. It was a world completely different from Claire's towers of polished glass. Marcus had just finished taking out the trash when he noticed the unfamiliar visitor. Emily approached with a respectful smile. Mr. Bennett? Yes, ma'am. My name is Emily Brooks. I work for Claire Whitmore. Marcus recognized the name immediately from the business magazines stacked in waiting rooms across the city. Emily continued carefully. Miss Whitmore would like to thank you personally for yesterday. She is hoping you might be willing to meet her tomorrow morning. Marcus looked toward his apartment window, where Lily waved excitedly from behind the curtains, completely unaware that another unexpected turn had just arrived at their front door. He looked back at Emily, puzzled but calm. I only changed a tire. Emily offered the smallest smile. According to Miss Whitmore, you may have done much more than that. The next morning began long before sunrise for Marcus Bennett. He ironed his only navy button-down shirt while Lily finished pouring cereal into two mismatched bowls. She watched him over the rim of her glass of orange juice with unmistakable curiosity. Is this a job interview? She asked. Marcus chuckled. I do not think so. Then why are you wearing the nice shirt? He smiled as he straightened the collar. Because someone invited me to a meeting, and showing respect never hurts. Lily thought about that answer for a moment before nodding. Can you tell the lady thank you for borrowing your jacket? Marcus laughed quietly. I will. Less than an hour later, he stepped into the towering headquarters of Whitmore Global for the first time. Marble floors reflected the morning sunlight. Glass elevators moved silently through the enormous atrium. Executives hurried across the lobby, carrying tablets and expensive coffee without noticing the maintenance worker standing near the entrance in polished but well-worn shoes. The receptionist smiled politely after checking his name. Miss Whitmore is expecting you, Mr. Bennett. Marcus thanked her and followed another assistant toward the executive floor. Every hallway seemed quieter than the last. Everything felt carefully designed. Even the silence sounded expensive. Inside the top-floor office, Claire Whitmore stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Atlanta. She turned as Marcus entered, offering the first genuine smile she had worn in days. Thank you for coming. Marcus nodded respectfully. You asked. I had the morning available. Claire gestured toward two chairs and a fresh pot of coffee resting between them. Please sit. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. It was not uncomfortable. It was simply unfamiliar. Claire finally broke the silence. Yesterday you treated me like an ordinary person. Marcus answered with quiet honesty. Yesterday, you were an ordinary person with a flat tire. Claire lowered her eyes and laughed softly, surprising even herself. Do you know how rare that is? No, ma'am. Almost nobody sees me before they see my title. Marcus looked around the office before returning his attention to her. Titles are important at work. They should not matter on the side of a highway. Claire studied him again. There was still no trace of calculation in his voice. No hiding agenda. Just calm certainty. Before she could continue, a sharp knock interrupted them. 3 board members entered without waiting for permission. Their expressions changed immediately upon seeing Marcus. One of them glanced briefly at his worn leather watch before looking toward Claire. We were told this meeting was urgent. Claire remained composed. It is. Another board member quietly asked, "Who is he?" Marcus started to stand. "I can come back later." Claire gently raised one hand. "Please stay." The room became noticeably colder. One director forced a polite smile. "Miss Whitmore, shareholders are already nervous after yesterday's market rumors. We cannot afford distractions." Marcus immediately understood he had become one without anyone saying the word aloud. He picked up his coffee cup and spoke calmly. "Then I should leave." Claire looked directly at the board members instead. The distraction is not this man. The distraction is believing character matters less than appearances. Nobody answered. One executive simply adjusted his tie, while another looked toward the city skyline rather than at Marcus. The meeting ended minutes later, but the silence lingered after the directors walked out. Claire slowly exhaled. "I owe you an apology." Marcus shook his head. "For what?" "Because they judged you before they knew anything about you." Marcus smiled with surprising warmth. "That happened long before today. It will probably happen again tomorrow." Claire felt those words settle heavily inside her. At that exact moment, Emily hurried into the office carrying a tablet, her usually calm expression replaced by concern. "Claire, we have another problem. The acquisition agreement cannot move forward unless your marital status issue is resolved today. The legal team says the emergency family trust clause has been activated." Claire's face lost its color. Marcus looked between the 2 women, completely confused. Emily swallowed carefully before continuing. "The attorneys need an immediate solution, or the board may suspend your voting authority before tonight." Marcus looked at Claire, then at Emily, waiting for someone to explain the sentence that had just changed the atmosphere inside the office. "I think I'm missing something," he said quietly. Emily placed the tablet on the conference table and took a careful breath. 5 years ago, Miss Whitmore's grandfather established a protective family trust before he passed away. One condition was kept confidential until now. If there is a hostile attempt to seize control of the company while the acting chief executive officer is unmarried and without a legal family representative, temporary voting authority transfers to an independent oversight committee. Claire folded her arms, staring out the window. He believed the company should always be led by someone who understood commitment beyond business. Marcus frowned. "And today?" Emily answered before Claire could. "The hostile investors discovered the clause this morning. They're already filing emergency motions." Silence settled across the room. Marcus had repaired broken heating systems his entire life. He understood mechanical problems. This was something entirely different. Claire finally turned back toward him. "If the board removes my authority today, thousands of employees may spend months trapped in uncertainty. Projects will stop. Contracts will freeze. People who have nothing to do with corporate politics could lose their jobs." Marcus nodded slowly. "That sounds like a heavy burden." Claire gave a tired smile. "It is." Emily hesitated before speaking again. "Our legal team found only one immediate solution that fully satisfies the trust requirements." Marcus noticed both women avoiding his eyes. "Which is?" Emily answered softly. "A legal marriage before the court closes this afternoon." The words seemed to hang in the air long after she finished speaking. Marcus blinked once, convinced he had misunderstood. Claire immediately shook her head. "Emily, enough." "Claire, we are out of time." Marcus looked from one face to the other. "Surely there is someone in your life better suited for that than a man you met yesterday." Claire laughed once without humor. "If there were, we would not be having this conversation." She walked toward the coffee table and slowly poured another cup she never intended to drink. "My relationships have always been measured against my company, my wealth, or my last name. Yesterday was the first conversation I've had in years where nobody asked what I could provide. Marcus remained quiet. He thought about Lily waiting after school, about overdue utility bills, about the promise he had made himself after losing his wife years earlier that every decision would protect his daughter first. He also remembered his father's words about kindness never following convenience. Those lessons had guided every ordinary day of his life. But this was not an ordinary day. If I even considered something like this, Marcus finally said, my daughter would deserve the truth. Claire met his eyes immediately, and she would have it. No pretending at home. Never. No asking me to become someone I am not. Claire answered without hesitation. That is the last thing I would ever ask. Emily quietly stepped outside, sensing the conversation no longer belonged to lawyers or executives. The office became still again. Claire spoke, almost in a whisper. Marcus, I'm not asking because you owe me anything. Yesterday you already gave me more kindness than I deserved. I am asking because I have run out of people I can trust. Marcus lowered his eyes for several seconds. The expensive office disappeared from his thoughts. He saw only Lily's smile, the tiny apartment filled with drawings taped to the refrigerator, and a lesson he tried to teach her every single day. Sometimes helping another person required more than an hour. Sometimes it required courage that made no sense at all. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed gently. It was a text message from Mrs. Dawson. Lily had written one simple sentence on a piece of notebook paper before leaving for school. Mrs. Dawson had taken a picture and sent it to him. The note read, Daddy, I hope you help somebody today because you always tell me the world gets better one person at a time. Marcus closed his eyes for only a moment. When he opened them again, Claire was still waiting, not with expectation, but with quiet hope. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked at Claire with the same calm expression he had carried through every difficult season of his life. If we do this, he said quietly, it cannot be built on lies. Claire nodded before he finished the sentence. Agreed. My daughter deserves honesty. She will have it. Your employees deserve stability. That is exactly what I am trying to protect. Marcus breathed slowly. Then I will help you. Claire did not answer immediately. Instead, she lowered her eyes for a brief second, as though the weight she had carried for years had become just a little lighter. Thank you, she whispered. Not because this saves my company, because you trusted my character before you had any reason to. Less than 2 hours later, they stood inside a quiet county courthouse instead of a luxury ballroom. There were no television cameras waiting outside yet. No orchestra, no celebration. Just a retired judge, 2 legal witnesses, Emily, and a stack of official documents resting on polished oak. The judge looked over his glasses with gentle curiosity. Marriage is usually accompanied by a very different atmosphere. Marcus smiled politely. Life like surprises. Even Claire laughed softly at that. The ceremony lasted less than 10 minutes. They answered each question honestly. They signed every required page carefully. Neither promised impossible romance. Neither pretended they understood where the future might lead. When the judge declared them legally married, the room remained almost completely silent. Emily quietly wiped away a tear she had not expected. Marcus and Claire exchanged one respectful handshake instead of an embrace. It felt unusual, yet strangely fitting. 2 strangers connected not by fantasy, but by responsibility. As they stepped outside, the afternoon sun had finally broken through the clouds that had covered Atlanta since the previous evening. Marcus looked up at the clear sky. The rain finally stopped. Claire followed his gaze. Maybe he was waiting for us to make a decision. Before either of them could say another word, dozens of notification alerts exploded across Claire's phone. Emily glanced at her own screen and quietly sighed. Someone leaked the courthouse records. Within minutes, every major business website carried the same headline. Financial analysts questioned the timing. Television commentators debated motives. Social media moved even faster. Thousands of strangers built entire stories from a single public document. Some called Marcus a fortune hunter without knowing his name. Others insisted Claire had lost her judgment. A few defended them, but their voices disappeared beneath the noise. Marcus watched the headlines scroll across Emily's tablet without visible anger. Claire looked at him with concern. "I am sorry." He simply shrugged. People usually fear the stories they invent more than the truth they do not know. Emily looked at him with quiet admiration. "How are you staying this calm?" Marcus smiled gently. "Because tonight I still have to help Lily with her science project. The internet cannot change that." Claire stared at him for a long moment. She had spent years allowing headlines to shape her mornings and board meetings to shape her evenings. Yet the man standing beside her measured the day by whether he made it home in time to help his daughter glue paper planets on a cardboard. For the first time in years, Claire wondered if she had been measuring success with the wrong ruler. As if reading her thoughts, Marcus turned toward her. "There is one more promise I need from you. Anything. Before Lily hears this from television, she deserves to hear it from us." Claire answered immediately. "Then let us go together." Emily quietly smiled. "The car is ready." As the black sedan pulled away from the courthouse, neither Marcus nor Claire noticed a silver vehicle parked across the street. Inside, one of the investment firm's senior executives lowered a pair of binoculars and spoke into his phone. "It is official," he said evenly. "The marriage happened. Change the strategy. If we cannot remove Claire Whitmore through the board, we will use her new husband instead. Find everything there is to know about Marcus Bennett." The drive across Atlanta felt strangely peaceful despite the storm unfolding online. Marcus sat in the back seat beside Claire, while Emily quietly answered calls that seemed to multiply every minute. Nobody spoke for several miles. The silence was not awkward. It was thoughtful. Marcus finally glanced toward Claire. "Does every day in your life move this fast?" Claire looked out the window at neighborhoods slipping past. "Usually faster." He smiled faintly. "I think I would get tired." Claire answered with unexpected honesty. "I already am." The black sedan turned onto Marcus's quiet street, where bicycles rested in front yards and children chased each other beneath tall oak trees. It was the first time Claire had ever entered a neighborhood where nobody recognized her. For a brief moment, she simply became another visitor. Mrs. Dawson opened the apartment door before they reached it, Lily standing beside her with a backpack nearly as big as she was. The little girl noticed Marcus first. "Daddy!" She ran straight into his arms before stopping to study Claire with innocent curiosity. "Is this the lady with the flat tire?" Marcus smiled. "Yes, Pumpkin. This is Claire." Claire crouched until they were nearly eye level. "Thank you for letting your dad help me yesterday." Lily smiled brightly. "He helps everybody." The simple answer caught Claire completely off guard. She laughed softly. "I believe that." Inside the apartment, the kitchen table was still covered with construction paper planets, glue sticks, and handwritten science notes. Claire looked around quietly. Family photographs filled the walls. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Nothing matched perfectly, yet everything felt loved. Marcus poured lemonade into 3 glasses. "Lily," he began carefully, "Claire and I need to tell you something important." Lily looked from one adult to the other without fear, only curiosity. Marcus explained everything in words an 8-year-old could understand. He spoke about helping people, about promises, about protecting jobs, and about how adults sometimes made difficult decisions to help others. He never once treated her like she was too young to understand honesty. When he finished, Lily looked at Claire for several long seconds before asking only one question. "Are you nice to my daddy?" Claire blinked, surprised. "I hope I am." Lily nodded. "Then I think it will be okay." Marcus smiled at his daughter. "That was your only question?" She shrugged. "You always say good people are more important than fancy people." Claire lowered her eyes. She could not remember the last time anyone had reduced life to something so beautifully simple. Just then, Emily's phone rang again. She stepped onto the small balcony before answering, but her expression changed almost immediately. She returned inside, looking noticeably concerned. "They have already started." Claire stood. "What happened?" Emily placed her phone on the kitchen table. A news channel filled the screen. An anonymous source claimed Marcus had deliberately approached Claire to gain access to her fortune. Old photographs of his apartment, workplace, and truck flashed across. the broadcast beside dramatic headlines, questioning his intentions. Marcus watched without speaking. Claire turned toward him. "None of this is true." "I know," Marcus answered calmly. Emily continued. "There is more. Someone has been contacting your former employers, asking misleading questions about your past. They are trying to create doubt." Lily looked between the adults, sensing the room had suddenly become heavier. Marcus gently reached over and turned off the television. Then he picked up the half-finished model of the solar system from the table. "Come on, Pumpkin," he said with a warm smile. "Mars still needs another coat of red paint." Claire watched in disbelief. The entire world seemed determined to pull Marcus into anger, yet he refused to let strangers steal even one afternoon from his daughter. For the first time, she truly understood the quiet strength she had married. It was not confidence. It was character. Somewhere across the city, however, people who had never met Marcus Bennett were already planning the next attack. Before we continue, take a quick second to subscribe to Black Dad Destiny if you have not already. If you love powerful family dramas, surprising stories, real-life inspired journeys, and stories with meaningful life lessons, you are in the right place. Your support helps us create a brand new cinematic story every single day. The next morning, Whitmore Global's executive boardroom felt colder than usual. Long before the meeting officially began, reporters had already gathered outside the building, hoping for another headline. Inside, directors whispered behind polished folders, while financial analysts projected market charts across enormous screens. Every graph seemed to tell the same story. Confidence was slipping. Claire walked into the room with her shoulders straight, but this time she did not enter alone. Marcus walked beside her, wearing the same navy button-down shirt he had worn the day before. He did not look like someone trying to impress billionaires. He looked exactly like himself. Several directors exchanged uncomfortable glances. One investor leaned toward another and muttered, "He actually came." Marcus heard the comment, but gave no reaction. Claire quietly noticed. That silence spoke louder than any argument could have. The chairman adjusted his glasses before clearing his throat. "Miss Whitmore, before we discuss the acquisition, we must address the public controversy surrounding your recent marriage." Claire nodded. "Go ahead." A senior director stood. "The market believes your judgment has been compromised. Investors are questioning whether this decision was emotional rather than strategic." Another director added, "Public perception matters." Claire folded her hands calmly. "So does truth." The room fell silent. The chairman turned toward Marcus for the first time. "Mr. Bennett, perhaps you would like to explain your intentions." Marcus stood without rushing. His voice remained steady. "My intention yesterday was to help someone stranded in the rain. My intention today is exactly the same." A few people shifted uncomfortably. One executive smiled politely, though the question behind his expression remained obvious. "You expect us to believe you married one of the wealthiest women in America without expecting anything in return." Marcus looked directly at him. "Sir, yesterday morning I expected to spend my evening helping my daughter finish a third-grade science project. Life changed. My values did not." Nobody interrupted. He continued quietly. "Money can change where a person lives. It cannot decide who they become. Character makes that decision every day." Across the table, Emily watched several board members lower their eyes. Claire remained completely still, yet something in her expression softened. She had spent years preparing presentations filled with forecasts, numbers, and strategies. Marcus had spoken for less than 1 minute, and somehow the room felt different. Then the chairman placed a printed report onto the table. Unfortunately, anonymous allegations continue to spread. Marcus glanced at the pages without reaching for them. "I do not need to read rumors to know they are rumors." Claire slowly stood. Every conversation stopped immediately. "Enough," she said calmly. "For years you trusted my judgment when I approved acquisitions worth billions of dollars after meetings that lasted less than an hour. Yesterday you questioned my judgment because I chose to trust the character of one honest man after seeing how he treated a complete stranger with no expectation of reward." She paused, allowing every word to settle. If your confidence in my leadership disappears because I married someone kind instead of someone powerful, then perhaps your confidence was never in my leadership at all. Nobody answered. The silence stretched across the room like morning sunlight through glass. Finally, one of the oldest directors quietly removed his glasses. "Miss Whitmore," he said softly, "I met your grandfather only twice. Listening today, I believe I finally understand why he wrote that trust the way he did." Several heads slowly nodded. Not everyone agreed, but doubt had begun changing sides. Outside the boardroom, however, another message arrived on the phones of the hostile investment group. Their leader read a brief update before speaking only 5 words. "If reputation failed, attack is past." 1 year later, the headlines had grown quiet. The television trucks were gone. The rumors had found newer targets. Whitmore Global had remained stable. Thousands of employees had kept their jobs, and the hostile takeover had quietly dissolved after every investigation into Marcus Bennett's past ended the same way. Honest work, clean records, countless neighbors willing to say the same thing. He was simply the kind of man who showed up when someone needed help. On a bright Saturday morning, Marcus stood outside Lily's elementary school gymnasium waiting for the annual science fair to begin. The same pickup truck rested beneath a maple tree, freshly washed but still carrying the small scratch on the rear bumper from years before. Claire stepped out of her sedan wearing a simple blue dress instead of a business suit. There were no security teams surrounding her today, only Emily carrying a tray of homemade cookies Lily had insisted everyone should share with the other families. Claire smiled as she walked toward them. "I hope I'm not late." Marcus looked at his watch with a grin. "You are 3 minutes early." Lily burst through the school doors carrying her solar system project with both hands. "You both came," she shouted before hugging Marcus and then Claire with the same excitement. To Lily, nothing about the moment felt unusual anymore. It simply felt like family. Inside the gymnasium, children proudly explained volcanoes, bridges, planets, and robots to parents who listened as though every project might change the world. Marcus admired each presentation with genuine attention, asking thoughtful questions that made every child smile. Claire noticed something she had never learned in boardrooms. People did not remember who had the biggest office. They remembered who made them feel seen. As the awards ceremony ended, Lily did not win first place. She finished third. For a brief second, disappointment crossed her face before Marcus knelt beside her. "Do you remember what success means?" he asked gently. Lily nodded. "Doing my best, even when nobody is watching." Marcus smiled proudly. "Exactly." Claire watched the exchange in silence. Months earlier, she would have measured the afternoon by trophies. Now, she measured it by the confidence in one little girl who walked away, smiling anyway. Later that evening, Marcus and Claire sat on the apartment balcony, while Lily laughed downstairs with neighborhood friends chasing fireflies across the courtyard. The summer air carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and distant barbecue grills. Claire rested her coffee cup on the small wooden table Marcus had repaired himself. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Of course." She looked toward the children playing below. "If you had driven past me that night instead of stopping, do you think either of our lives would look like this?" Marcus thought for a long moment before answering. "Maybe not." Claire smiled gently. "Then the most important decision either of us ever made lasted less than 30 seconds. Marcus nodded. Kindness usually does. They sat together without saying another word. The city skyline shimmered in the distance, but neither of them looked toward it. Everything that mattered was already within sight. Sometimes the greatest miracles do not begin with grand speeches, impossible wealth, or dramatic victories. Sometimes they begin with one ordinary person choosing not to drive away. And sometimes the quietest act of kindness becomes the loudest answer a wounded heart will ever hear. Every story leaves us with a question. What would you have done if you were in their place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoy touching stories, inspiring life journeys, emotional family dramas, and unforgettable love stories, don't forget to like, subscribe to Black Dad Destiny, and turn on notifications. A brand new cinematic story is waiting for you tomorrow.